Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to be joined today by Leslie Tom, who's the SVP of the AppExchange Marketing over at Salesforce, who is absolutely wonderful, and we're thrilled to have her join us today. Um, just a quick reminder, we try to get through your questions throughout the talk, so if you have questions, go ahead and fire them away in the Q&A section below. And reminder for our executive members, we'll be hosting a speakers lounge to talk directly with Leslie right after this talk. So come and join the Cloud Software Association at cloudsoftwareassociation.com. And at this point, Leslie, I should probably introduce myself. I'm the host today. I'm Cody. I'm the head of partnerships over at Zapier, and I have the honor of interviewing and talking with Leslie today. So Leslie, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and just maybe tell that story that maybe won't get told unless we do that now.
I'm Leslie Tom, SVP AppExchange Marketing. I started at Salesforce, believe it or not, in December 2005. So yes, I just celebrated my 15th year at Salesforce. But the great thing about Salesforce too, I think obviously it's a long time, but I've had the opportunity at Salesforce to really work with partners almost the entire time, but really focus on different aspects. And I think that's what's kept me there. And of course, today, and we'll get through this in our just talk today, but now that I'm on AppExchange Marketing, I was telling Cody earlier that I love my job because it's really working like a startup within a 50,000 person company. So we'll talk more about kind of like maybe how I got here and some of the learnings I had along the way that I can share with all of you.
I love it. I'm looking forward to it. I think that was the most surprising thing for me to hear how well the level of autonomy that you have. So maybe we'll hear more
Hmm.
about that in a minute. But we're grateful that you're here. And today, as we discussed earlier, this is a topic that in the CSA we spend a lot of time talking about partner programs and the different strategies and things like that. This is a little bit off the beaten path, and I'm glad that we're discussing it, which is the magic of connecting purpose and passion, and maybe something that it's actually critical and vital to every one of us in our career development and just general in life. But maybe not something that is talked about very often. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. And maybe you can kind of give us just a quick overview or an introduction to this talk today.
Yeah, I mean, when Senior asked me he goes, tell your story and talk about the magic of purpose and passion. I was kind of like, okay, that seems, I don't know if that's really going to be boring or what. But I certainly like the idea of purpose and passion, but I know we have all read so much about it. In fact, I was telling Cody that I Googled the two words purpose and passion. If you do that right now, you'll get like 338 million results. So obviously, a lot has been written about it, but as I was saying, while some people were coming in, it's even more important today. We're in a pandemic, and it's a great time to really reflect and connect that purpose and passion from a company, a partnership, and an individual perspective. Because we all know that if we're kind of happy in heart and mind, that we'll all do better and kind of reach our full potential. And I was telling him also too that a big part of that, and I don't know if you can see this, so I'll zoom in a little bit, is really around the importance of passion and purpose. And we talked about from a company, entrepreneur, or I say entrepreneur or partner, and an individual perspective. Because when you think about it, companies, like there was an HBR report written a few years ago, but about 500 CEOs were saying, that purpose is super important for employee satisfaction, organizational ability, and increasing customer loyalty, but only half were really sharing a strong sense of purpose for their company. And Mark Benioff, I'll zoom away from this right now, but Mark Benioff says, the business of doing business is improving the state of the world. That is Salesforce. That's our purpose, right? We would do business to improve the state of the world. And I think that's great. It's a mantra that we all say and we all rally around. As an entrepreneur, for the entrepreneurs that we support and bringing on to Salesforce platform and the App Exchange, entrepreneur asked me, should I create this app because I'm really passionate about it, or should I create this one because I know it's going to make money? And I'm like, well, Of course, we all know it's not an either or, right? You have to figure out how to align both of those things to move forward and progress. And as an individual, I think for us, it's really, we know that if you're happier and healthier and you have that strong sense of connected purpose and passion, that you'll do better. Teams perform better, you have happier employees, and you can bring kind of that positive energy to everyone.
Well, it's just exciting. I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, to hear how you all think about it, especially, I know that you share a little bit more about how Salesforce specifically breaks it down so that you can take action on this, and we'll get to that a little
Mhm.
bit later. But I mean, tell me, there's a lot of information on purpose and passion, and how do you sift through it all, and like, how do you make sense of it?
Yeah. So, as I was looking at through a lot of this online, but even in reflecting for myself over the past, whatever, year since we've been in this pandemic, I think it's given all of us some time to really reflect, read more. I know I have a lot of friends that are reading a lot more, whether it's business books or self help or things like that. When you reflect back though on the books that we've probably all read, like Good to Great, from a company perspective, it's all around, Jim Collins wrote this whole thing about, the disciplined people, disciplined thought, disciplined action that's really required to grow your company and take that leap from a good to a great company. So that's really kind of around purpose. And then, of course, we all know, if you haven't seen it, but we all know Simon Selnick's golden circle, where he talks about how to, focus on the why, not the how, because we always talk about finding your why. And I think, Cody, you mentioned that you read a book just recently, right, about this?
Yeah, it's actually there was a video that I saw where actually it was Simon Sinek, and he was talking about
Mhm.
specifically the purpose and the talking about like a lot of times I don't know if anybody has ever been at a company where they're like, well, our purpose is to make money, and he said, well, that's not like that doesn't really drive or inspire or motivate people. He said the money is fuel, right? Like
Uh-huh.
the purpose of a like if you use an example of a car is kind of something along the lines that he said, but like the purpose of a car is not to buy gas, like, and the purpose of the car is to go somewhere, right? And similarly, the purpose of a company is not to make money, and neither should our purpose as individuals be to make money
Mhm.
or something along those lines, but maybe something a little money might fuel that. But I think that's the importance of kind of what you're getting to, which is focus on why, not the how we get there type of thing.
Right. Kind of your value proposition, that is for me as a marketer, finding that right value proposition that resonates is key. But the last piece on individuals, and maybe many of you probably know Jay Shetty and have listened to his podcast and read his book. I actually just discovered him during the pandemic, probably on Instagram because I was looking at it more often. But he is an amazing author, podcaster, former monk. I didn't know that.
Wow.
So, of
Yeah.
course, I had to read that book, Think Like a Monk. But I think his takeaways are so reflective of passion and purpose, because he talks about, head, which is kind of your own intellectual side, which is really about what you want or why you want something, which is purpose. Heart, which is more around the emotional side, which is around passion,
Hmm.
and your hand, which is kind of behavioral, which is kind of like how you kind of pay it forward. And I love that idea of what he says and kind of the takeaways of that as well.
I love that too. That's so. Now,
Hmm.
if I will say this, maybe just a quick question for you, Leslie. Like, um, obviously, like purpose and passion are often used in the same sentence, and I think
Right.
sometimes it's a confusing term. Like, what is the purpose and what is the passion? And like, I think sometimes they're interchanged. And I
Hmm.
think from what I'm hearing you say here, there's a very distinct difference between the two. And maybe for our listeners, I mean, how would you define purpose versus passion, just simply?
Yeah, I think for me, and I think it's different for everyone, but for me, a purpose is kind of more a kind of your value proposition, like
Mhm.
the thing that, like, just I think I'd probably take away more from what Jay Shetty has said,
Yeah.
just what I mentioned, and that's why I think from an individual standpoint, where it resonated so closely with me about your head, the intellectual side, but marrying it with your heart, with the what you really love. And for me,
Yeah.
a lot of it was like, what do I really enjoy? And I kind of went through this thought process just to kind of validate, am I where I really want to be still? Obviously we're going through a pandemic. I don't know if I would make a big career change, but certainly it made me think about, what do I love about my job? And I think a lot of us, reflect on what we love about our job. And I think for me, it's really about helping connecting people with, whether it's partners, teams within Salesforce, or other people outside of Salesforce, connecting them to really do their best work. For me, it's like a purpose and a passion that aligns for me in my role today. So I think for me, it's been very, very good, something that drives me and motivates me every day and keeps me really
Yeah.
happy.
No, I love that. Well, thank you for
Mhm.
sharing. I know it's something that like oftentimes can be confusing. Well, so maybe segueing into your career, how did purpose and passion impact your career? I mean, there's a lot of people that say, focus on your passion and you'll never work a day in your life, right?
Right.
I hear a lot of these things, but tell us a little bit more about your story and how these things came to play in your career.
Yeah, and I think this is obviously true for a lot of us. Cody and I had a great conversation because he was like, "Oh my gosh, I know that one. I'm very familiar." But we can go through four myths. These are myths that this will tell my story of my career, but also just kind of the myths that I encountered, and I realized, oh, that was a total myth. So I think let's bust some myths together. But I think maybe an opportunity for all of you to really think about, what myths are you encountering in your own careers. For me, myth number one was, if I focus on what I'm really good at and I can make some money, I'll be successful. And I think for me, getting out of college, I was a major in psychology and business, and I was always good at numbers, so kind of like, the right brain, left brain side. But I thought, oh, if I really focus on accounting and finance, I'll make more money. So I chose not to go to business school. I thought, I'll make some money. I did financial analysis, managing budgets, did a lot of accounting for the government. I think, was I good at it? I think yes. Was I really happy? Probably not, because what I learned was that I need to be learning all the time. I need to be motivated. I need to be working with people who I'm engaged with at a level where I'm really connected on the same objective. And that was myth one number one for me. Do you have any comments on this one, Cody, for yourself?
Well, yeah, it's like there's the E Myth is a book written by Michael Gerber that I read years ago that was very similar along these lines, which is like,
Hmm.
well, I'm really good at X, so I'm gonna become an entrepreneur doing X, but you may not be good at all the other things that are required to just
Right.
do X, right? And we ran into like this is I had a really good friend. He was doing this was back in our early 20s. He was doing pest control and like, well, hey, I could run a business like this. I'm going to go create my own business. And next thing you know, you're not just really good at pest control, but you're now the chief janitor and you're now the chief scheduler and you're now I mean all these different hats that he found he really didn't enjoy, right?
Hmm.
And it was a struggle for him for years. And so I think this just completely resonates with not only me, but I think a lot of people who, if I focus on what I'm good at, I'll be successful. I mean, funny enough, I was a finance major as well. I was going
Hmm.
to go work on Wall Street. Was good with numbers, and I just found myself completely unhappy. Like numbers, you know, don't make me happy. I'm good at them. I don't enjoy them, and so I think your example really resonated with me. But yeah, but let's keep going. I know you've got a few of these
Yeah.
other myths, and you're speaking a language that's just I resonated with your outline so much when we were going through this. So excited to get into number
Yeah.
two here.
Yeah, number two, obviously, I think this is when you were just talking about, if you just do what you love, I'll be success. If I just do what I love, I'll be successful. And so for me, I've always been, into fashion and design and clothing. I was like, oh my gosh, I took time off to raise my kids, and I thought, oh, I'm at home. I have an opportunity to actually just do anything I want. I'm going to create a clothing line, create and design it. At the time it was children's clothing, also do jewelry design. I loved it. Did I love it? I did. I loved it. I threw myself into it, tried to create a program, got into like Nordstrom, like a little mini trunk show. I was so proud of myself. But then I realized it wasn't fun anymore. And it was sometimes your passion, I learned, is not going to be your job, because then it becomes a job. And then maybe some things are just best left to be a passion, not your job, not your everyday life. So that's kind of what I learned on myth number two.
Well, absolutely. And this is the one that, I mean, just going back to the beginning of this section where it's like, I'm a millennial. My generation has been told, follow your heart, explore, have fun. But
Hmm.
realistically, I think this is so important. Oftentimes, that intersection of like what you love and what success is like, they're very far apart. And
Hmm.
sometimes it requires you just getting in and starting
Hmm.
to work really hard to understand what you love might change over time and what you're willing to do to be successful. I mean, those things aren't necessarily um, they're not, it's for very few people. I think they come together just because of whatever your passion or love is happens to be a potential, something that can really drive a career or long-term security for you. And I think that
Hmm.
sometimes that comes through the work, sometimes getting in and figuring something out. I mean, for example, your I know you're going to tell a little bit more about this, but your shift into this space alone is kind of an
Hmm.
interesting story about finding your passion long term. So maybe that's a good
Yeah.
segue into the third one here. But
Yeah.
would love to hear
Myth,
more on that.
yeah, myth number three. And you're absolutely right. I think a big part of all of this passion and purpose for a lot of people, they already know. Like I have friends that are in the medical industry, they're doctors or they're in a lawyer. They came right out of school. They're doing it still. They still love their jobs. But for many other people, I think it wasn't like I came out of college and said, I want to be um, I want to work with partners. I didn't even know what partners were, right? It's not even like working in partnerships isn't something that you kind of major in, but you do major in business, business, psychology. A lot of different backgrounds are related. And we can find, I think, if we did a cross section of everyone's what they what they learned in college, or even if they didn't go to college, like where did they start, we would find that our path was very windy, and that's fine. And I think that's great. I think number three, though, is really like I can't start a new job and take a pay cut to do something different. So when I made the shift from finance to marketing, I took a over a 30% pay cut. And I say that because it was 7 years where I was a stay-at-home mom and I was a single parent and I was working for the government, where I then made a big shift to take a big pay cut and place a bet to do something in marketing, not in finance. So I really had to start at the bottom at Oracle, but obviously big company, knew that I had an opportunity to work my way up. But I did take a big pay cut, and at the time I was able to do that, so I was very lucky. But I think the learning here was really to stay true to yourself and what you want to do, and not to be able to take a risk to do something different, because you can always go back to that first thing, right? And so think that's kind of my big learning for that one. It was probably one of the biggest ones.
Well, I hear this all the time from people asking, can I make a career change or can I move to that next new company? I think that this one, I think it will resonate with a lot of people. I know personally for me, it does because I found myself in sales, running sales teams for a software startup back in 2004, and it's what I was good at. It's kind of like the E Myth. I was good at sales, so I'll be good at running sales teams. I found myself just
Hmm.
totally unhappy doing that, and um, I was intrigued with partnerships. Wanted to kind of head into that world. By the way, I wouldn't have known that partnerships and strategic alliances and integration partners. Yeah, I would have never known that as a kid. I couldn't. like call it out, like this is my passion. Um,
Right.
but by being in the industry and figuring that out, I had an opportunity to go start and build that. And I distinctly remember, pay in sales is great. As a young 20-something-year-old making close to 300 grand a year, like
Hmm.
to try something else just felt, it was scary. But I remember making the leap, leaving sales, and a lot of my colleagues and friends, what are you doing? Why would you do that? It was similar, a pay cut of about
Hmm.
50% to kind of head into this world. But I'm so glad that I did it. And honestly, to
Hmm.
your point, I love how you position this. You can always go back. Like, had that not worked out,
Hmm.
I could go back to sales, sure. It's not where my heart lies. I think that's kind of the importance of knowing your passion and your skills and what actually you can get paid to do. But like,
Hmm.
it very much. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that struggle with this, and so thank you for bringing that up. I know that there's many of us that fret over this as we think about new opportunities and maybe shifting into different things here. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And so, yeah, the last one for me too, and this may be true for some of you, maybe just taking some time off, but at Salesforce, we have the opportunity to take a sabbatical after 5 years. You can take some time off. You have to work it out with your manager, of course, and it has to go through approvals. Um, but the myth was, I can't take a work sabbatical. It's irresponsible. It's risky because you don't get paid during that time. So there's a lot of risk in the sense that it's not only that you don't get paid, but the fact is that you may are likely not to come back to the same job
mm,
because I think a lot of people take sabbatical to kind of reassess, reflect, relax. Maybe they can come back to the same job if they really wanted to, but a lot of times people take sabbatical for that very reason to maybe make a shift to do something different. I had this opportunity to do this about 5 years ago. I've been running global partner marketing across all partner types for the company. Great team, great manager. I liked my job, but I wasn't as inspired anymore, and I could feel that. So I thought, gosh, I really need to make a change. And of course, I had been at the company for 10 years. And I had been doing different things, but a lot of that had kind of culminated into that last job. So I kind of decided to take a leap of faith, decided that even if I came back to a different job at Salesforce, that would probably be a good thing. And maybe I could help define that. Long story short, I came back and eventually within a few months was able to go back. Layla Seka, as many of you know, or Cody, I know you know, said, let's start App Exchange all over again. Let's reboot it and make it bring it to back where it needs to be. So we had the opportunity. I had the opportunity to come back to run App Exchange Marketing, but I said, well, if I come back, we also need programs. We need the Accelerate program. We need to do enablement. We need to do everything around the entire business. So she was able to bring all that back together. I got to own a big piece of it, and together with our technical, enablement leader, Andrew Albert, we all the three. It was just the three of us came back and pulled teams together to kind of reboot App Exchange, and we've gone through a lot of changes, a lot of great changes. But that's kind of where it is for me today, and I think that decision to take a sabbatical and take something brand new, kind of like the previous myth, was amazing. Because for me, App Exchange is a startup within the 50,000 person company. And that's why I am here today still.
yeah, I love it. And by the way, thank you. As one of your App Exchange partners, we have seen
Hmm.
the difference, and so it's been really great to see that your decision to stay true to yourself and take a risk and take time to really refocus resulted in, I think, arguably, I mean, thousands and thousands of partners having a better experience because of that. And so I think that's great. By the way, we've got a few things that are coming into the chat,
Yeah.
and so if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you
Yeah.
a couple of questions here. There's
Hmm.
one from Greg where he kind of tells his story. He says, I always wanted to have my own small company. When I actually acted on it, I realized that what I wanted wasn't to have my own business, but to build a brand and start a business. Once it started, I lost my drive. So the hard part was being honest with myself about what I really wanted and it not being as glamorous as an entrepreneur, as defined by the market. The epiphany led me to the partnership world. So kind of cool.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Seeing
I
somebody
love
kind
that
of
story.
take your advice in real life and how it kind of panned out. Well, Greg, we're glad
Yeah.
you're here. So thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. And another comment, I love Leslie's transparency and humility. Truly a wonderful persona for a massive SaaS powerhouse. So yeah, thank you for asking these, and keep the questions coming as we continue through the chat here. That's what this is for. So
Hmm.
again, just a quick reminder, let's try to keep them focused on purpose and passion, as that is the topic that we're kind of discussing today. Now, maybe transitioning here, Leslie, like
Hmm.
we've talked a lot about the career side, and Salesforce is just a great place where you've been able to learn and grow and really hone these skills.
Hmm.
But maybe let's transition and talk about how purpose and passion, how do they connect in your personal life, and what has that meant to you there?
Yeah, and I know it was interesting. Having an opportunity to speak about something that's not business oriented and it's more personal really makes you take some time to reflect. So I spent last weekend going, like, what do I really want to talk about here? But I really thought about like going back to how I grew up, and one of the words that my dad used to tell me all the time. I'm Japanese American. My dad, I'm third generation Japanese American. But my dad was actually in military intelligence for the U.S. Army during World War II.
Hmm.
So I'm really dating myself. But he did while he spoke perfect Japanese. He obviously fought for. He was a military intelligence and interpreter for the U.S. Army during the Cold War. But he always talked about ikigai, and ikigai is something that I've seen more often, which is interesting. And I'll tell you why it's kind of an interesting contrast to what I think it means.
Hmm.
But ikigai for in Japanese really is about all your purpose, like why you get out of bed in the morning. What drives you? What's kind of your path to what the softer side of like enlightenment? And it's not something that it's something that evolves over time. So it's maybe not something that uh, you know uh, you might think about early in your life, but later in life as you get more experience. So for me, that was kind of a personal thing that I thought about. How do I really stay be authentic, maintain kindness in every interaction, gratitude, things like that, that you have more of that opportunity to do maybe later in life. For me, but ikigai was kind of like is kind of a pillar, I guess, for me in terms of finding passion and purpose.
And we see a few comments where people are agreeing that they really enjoy this, and I guess
Hmm.
so. How do these really come together? I mean, do you use these? How do you use it in your own life there?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think so that like we talked about ikigai because it's something my dad always would say. It's like you got to find your purpose. Like like be like choose to be positive every time you step out of bed in the morning. You always have a choice. So I think that kind of drives just general like positivity
Hmm.
and purpose for every day. But I saw this, and I'll come into this closer. But I saw that ikigai, a lot of people use this graph, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. And if you haven't, sometimes that red dot in the middle is called ikigai, but it's actually not super true, like at least from
Hmm.
my perspective. However, you can look at this as a purpose diagram. And I saw this diagram and I thought this is more accurate representation, but a purpose diagram. And I talk about this a lot with even my team. It's like, even, knowing what you're good at isn't always like what I said, the myth isn't always what you want to chase, but you kind of have to know what you're good at, what your potential is, kind of how you give back to the community. I think my whole team in Salesforce are really, all about giving back to the community. And then, of course, it's great if you can make money as well. So I think, this purpose diagram is kind of a second pillar, I guess, if you will, in terms of looking at purpose and passion. I think it's a great way for us to align, like if you're your team members, um, if you work with entrepreneurs, it's a great way to help them, because I think a lot of times we have amazing entrepreneurs and partners coming in, like, but what, apps. to fill a specific white space, apps to, a lot of people are doing passion apps, like things that they just believe in are for the good. But are they going to make money? Maybe not. But maybe they know that, and that's okay too. So I think there's just a choice that you need to make and know where you're going, and what your purpose is.
This is fantastic, and I think many of us have like I just remember clearly in my early 20s being sat down with a few of my mentors, and literally one of them drawing the diagram for me, and I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, this makes so much sense."
Right.
And but I guess there's actually one question here that I'd love
Uh
to
huh.
ask, and because I think it kind of aligns with this, and it felt similar to where I was in that point in my career. But here's a question from an anonymous attendee. So anonymous
Okay.
attendee, please listen sharply. I'm fairly confident that I've defined my purpose and passion, which is strategic partnerships. One of my challenges is trying to figure out how to effectively communicate internally that one, this is my destiny, and two, how can I start building the skill sets with my existing company to be able to fulfill this? And so I don't know if we can tackle that now, or if you want to work that into later into the discussion. But yeah, that's one of the questions that I think you might have a lot of insight on.
Yeah, I mean, well, whoever that anonymous person is, I'm happy to chat one on one, because I can say that because there's not like hundreds of participants on this call. But you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Leslie J. Tom, or you can just email me at ltom@salesforce.com. Strategic partnerships, I think, for at Salesforce are defined a little bit differently. Like we used to say just partnerships. Strategic partnerships at Salesforce are like the big boys, like our
Yeah.
our partnerships that we have with Amazon or Google.
And
Those are,
Zapier, right?
yeah, Zapier, of course, they're like in the mix. I have to tell you, and we did talk about this. Zapier, when you first joined the App Exchange, we were so impressed. We're like, this is the future, because connecting with all the API, having all these API integrations is like the future of what we need. So we love you as a partner. But strategic partnerships, and I'd love to get your take on this too. It depends on where your company is in its growth, right? Because I think partnerships became much more strategic for Salesforce as we got bigger. When I started, the company was very young. We didn't have a partner program. We just had one partner, and it was Accenture. And so when I joined, they said, we want you to start partner marketing. And I was like, great, what is that? And I think as we grew though with partnerships overall, we knew that we wanted to build an ecosystem. And the ecosystem, and this came from the top, right, from Mark himself. Heard from Steve Jobs, great, you've got a company, now you have to build an ecosystem. And Mark was like, okay, great. So he came back and said, we need to build an ecosystem. And we're all like, great, what's that? Right. And so we built and invited partners to our marketplace and our app exchange, just to start that. Like, when did they become strategic? And when we got a mass amount of partners, where we started identifying some partners as strategic, not just for the marketplace, but for the company. And I think, you know, in defining strategic partnerships, and maybe I'm going into this too deep, but there becomes a time in the growth of a company, to me, where strategic partnerships do become like the lever for growth. So I'll pause there, because I think there is a way that you can frame it, and maybe I can go to my next slide after I hear from Cody about how you can frame that and position it to your executive management.
100. That's exactly. I think the biggest thing is number one, people need to know about it. They need to know that this is where you want to go next.
Right.
And secondly,
Hmm.
kind of doing that, like the analysis of where I'm at today and what do I need to do and what do I need to build to be ready for opportunities that will
Hmm.
come eventually down the pike. And so maybe tell us a little bit more. Like, so I think this is a perfect question. How do you really use the purpose diagram to really kind of make this from something on the paper to like an actual plan? How do you all
Yeah.
use that?
Great segue. So, at Salesforce, I think the company has grown, and as everyone knows, we grew from Mark Parker and a couple others built the company from a 4-person company to over 50,000, and I joined when it was about 1,300 people. So of course it's been amazing to see the massive growth and momentum. A big question what everybody asks is like, how did you keep the company aligned through that whole time? How did you continue to innovate while keeping everybody on the same page and motivated, right, to grow the ecosystem, which was their customers, our partners, our developers, our entrepreneurs, all at the same time? And Mark really developed this system, and I think I wouldn't call it like just our objectives for the year, which a lot of people have. Oh, we have yearly planning. But I think, and many of you probably may have heard of what we call our V2 Mom, which is our vision, values, methods, obstacle, and metrics. And I'll zoom in here just really quickly. And I'll share this and I'll tell you why this is important. But it's really the vision. Like, what do you want to achieve? So for the person who asked the partnership question, you can take this as almost like a business plan. Like, what are you trying to achieve? Your values, what's important to you? Like, why is this important? The methods, which is the orange one, like, how do you get there? So it could be, we usually do 8 to 10 methods with a description. Underneath every one of those, we have the measures, which is really the last one. But you also have to define your obstacles. And a big part of why I like the V2 Mom, not just for setting our fiscal year priorities as a team, but I use this for myself. I use it for any new project. Say we're doing a big launch. We do a V2 Mom for a launch, for a product launch. We have a new idea about innovation. I create a V2 Mom because it helps refine the purpose, why it's important, and you can add your passion to that as well. A big part of why this has worked for the company and why we share it with our customers, our partners, and basically I share it with my friends and my kids who have actually used it. My son actually got a job at Genomic Health because he created a V2 Mom, basically said, this is my presentation, this is why I want to work here, this is why it's valuable to me, these are the things I can bring to the company, these are things that might hold me back, like knowing your what you could bring and where your weaknesses are, but also how you can measure the impact of your commitment. So I think from doing a business plan, I think this is what's not only kept the company going, but how it keeps my team going, and even for myself, because this encourages creativity, alignment. It's a living, breathing document for us throughout the year. So it's open to change so that you're not like locked into this, but you're always willing to change. And of course, for us as a company, this helped us define and be a little bit more resilient last year during the pandemic, and
Absolutely.
continues to be helpful for us as well.
It's so great. I kind of
Mhm.
wonder what it would be like to be one of your kids. Like, at what point did it move from this is annoying to, wow, mom, I'm really grateful that you made me do this.
Well, I think they're
I
in high
love it.
school. Yeah,
Yeah.
and my daughter uses it for projects at school. When she was in college, she even said this really helped her. Even when she was a senior in high school, she used it for a project, and everybody was like, "Wow, this is pretty good," because you're kind of thinking about all aspects. But I share that, and obviously it's not perfect, but it's obviously worked well for us as a company. I think the proof point is in the fact that we share this with our customers. Um, in what we call, our Salesforce Innovation Center briefings, like our customer briefings. I share it with partners in order to fulfill what we want to do going forward in the year together as a partnership as well.
I love it.
So, yeah,
I
just
love
ideas.
that it's like it applies both at work and in your own
Yeah.
life.
Hmm.
And I think, I mean, maybe just to kind of wrap things up. So,
Hmm.
back to the question that I think that from the anonymous attendee, um,
Hmm.
the very first question was, how do I communicate that this is my destiny? And I guess my question to you is like, we've gotten the tools, we've talked about some of the strategies and things that you can do to determine what your passion and purpose might become.
Hmm.
What do you do next with that?
Yeah, for me, I think when I did have an idea on like what I wanted to do, I was nervous about putting a plan together. I created a semblance of a V2 model, like why I would be willing to take on this other job with these other teams who were not even in my purview at the time, but how it helps the business grow, right?
Hmm.
You think everything from how it grows the business and how it helps with customer success for all of us, those two things combined with the thing that you want to do, I would go to your manager or the department where you know that you can have this idea, and hopefully they're open to having people that are coming to them with innovative ideas that will help grow and motivate the company. I mean, I hope that's what
Yeah,
happens, because I've encouraged other people even within the company that I mentor to do the same. And even if it's a project, like I want to take over, an engineering project, and he was able to do that because he
that's
showed
great.
them how he could effectively do it.
I love that. Well, thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that. And
Yeah, of
maybe
course.
in closing, Leslie, I know we're coming up on
Mhm.
time, but any final thoughts? I know you've read some interesting books lately.
Oh, yes, I did. Well, I didn't finish reading this book, but I was just talking about, let's see, Green
There you go.
Lights. And it's with Matthew McConaughey, who I love as an actor. But he talks about it, and he was actually on one of our, company calls about a month ago or so. And he talked about how it's really, he was a writer. He wrote many diaries and a lot of personal thoughts. But what he realized looking back and reflecting on his, I think he's about 50 now, his lifetime, was to realize, I want to create this guidebook. He basically took a sabbatical, took time off, went to the desert, and reflected on his path and realized that he wants to write this book because he wanted to create a guide for more green lights, which is why, hence the name of the book. And realizing that a lot of red and yellow lights, which are maybe obstacles in our life, eventually turn green, right? So I thought that was a great quote or reflection of his. And I think the thing that he uh, really focused on is that a lot of this is, some of it's by design, some of it's on purpose, some just happens, but to kind of take advantage of moving forward. So I think in closing, I would just say, be open to finding that magic of purpose and passion. It's already a part of you. It's not about finding it. It's about kind of like just making time and being open to the possibilities.
I love it. I love this
Hmm.
talk so much. I'm so glad that we took time to do this, maybe a little
Hmm.
bit off the normal beaten path in the CSA. So, Leslie,
Uh-huh.
again, thank you for all the preparation, sharing the deep wisdom on the magic of connecting purpose and passion. And we're grateful for your thoughts and energy on this topic.
Great. Yeah.
Um, and with that, we'll bring this to a close. Just a quick reminder, if you're not a member of the CSA, please join us at cloudsoftwareassociation.com. Free Slack group. It's awesome. It's how great connections like this happen. And secondly, those of you that are executive members, we will be having the Q&A with Leslie right after this. So thank you again, everybody, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
We'll
Thank
see
you.
you.
For more great insights on partnerships and software, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.